Okay.
All right, welcome to a regular monthly meeting of the Princeton Historic Preservation Commission, which is being held electronically via Zoom on May 21st, 2022 at 4 p.m. Pursuant to Section 13 of the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of the time and place and agenda of this meeting has been transmitted to the Princeton Packet, Town Topics, the Times, the Trentonian, and by filing a copy with the clerk of Princeton, who has posted it to the municipal website, www.princetonnj.gov/meetings. Pursuant to Executive Order 107, due to the state of emergency in New Jersey regarding COVID-19 coronavirus, notice that the declared state of emergency, all regular and special meetings of the Princeton Historic Preservation Commission will be held electronically via Zoom. Such notices have been placed on the official bulletin board at the Princeton Municipal Complex and on the website, and are maintained throughout the year. Okay, Elizabeth, do you want to do the roll call?
Yes. Ms. Capozzoli,
Yeah, I'm here.
Mr. Shore,
Live and in color.
Mr. Anderson,
That's great.
Ms. Satterfield. Shirley, you're muted.
Here in a deeper color.
I love it.
Mr. Shafkin,
Here, no comment other than that.
Ms. Howard,
Here.
Mr. Pyle.
Yo.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Okay, and thank you, Mr. Newland, for attending our meeting.
Good to be here. Good afternoon to everyone.
Good afternoon.
Hi. Hello.
So, Elizabeth, do you have any announcements?
I just have a quick announcement to make, which probably could be a discussion later on. So it came to my attention from the building department and the fire official that there was a property within the Witherspoon Jackson neighborhood, which is the original church, the one-room church for the Morning Star, which they condemned because of the condition. Shirley was at that meeting, and so was Leighton. They are working with the pastor and the congregation to see what can be done. I don't know if either of them want to talk about, give a little insight now or kind of leave it till later.
We can do it now or do it later, whichever is
No,
convenient.
how about now? Because Ed's not here, so.
Okay, Pastor Bynes, they call him Elder Bynes. He's a pastor of Morning Star Church of God in Christ. And he called me today and said he's talked with his advisors because he has to talk to the bishop, which is the head of the church, and also his parishioners. So he's talked with his advisors, and what they have brought to our attention is that if possible, if we bought the property and bought that little house, then it would become in whoever's name. And I thought of Witherspoon Jackson Historical and Cultural Society, but that's where it is now. And it's something that has to be discussed because I don't know how we're going to buy it, if the Historical Society buys it, or if we can do that. But I was thinking of actually, and this is probably going ahead, of actually buying it as a museum. And so we could get that and extend it, but not to extend the back, but he wants to put something in the back like a shed or whatever. So that's where we are now, but it has to come before the Historical Preservation, and it has to come before Historical Society and Cultural Society and whoever else is going to be involved in this. But that's where we are now. And he said that his advisors stated that we could buy it. We just don't want it torn down, but if it's torn down, we want to replace it with something that is a replica of, because it is an historic site and there is a plaque in front of it. But I thought that wanting to have a museum, that would be a convenient place for it, because there's no other place for it. So I've discussed it with Layton. It's just that I don't know where we go from here.
Was there a meeting yet with Jim Huffman out at the site, Shirley or Layton? I know that you were going to reach out to him to look
No,
at this.
Layton may have, but I didn't.
I'm still trying to reach Jim Huffman, and if I don't hear from him tomorrow, I've called him once and left a message, text message. If I don't hear from him tomorrow, I'll shift gears and go to another structural engineer. But let me just back up for a minute to give you an additional perspective to Shirley's. Number one, when we got there, it became obvious to us initially that the mission was to save the historic site. This building, as I think everyone on this call can imagine and understand, is a historic site for many different reasons, but it's just a really small building that lends itself to restoration. And, you know, I think Shirley and I both felt bad that, you know, because we do what we do here in the community and we represent what we represent. And I got to be honest, I've been driving by that building for many years, and it's been that way for a long time. And I'm like, I wonder why I never really paid enough attention to that building and that church to take a greater interest in its sustainability. The Baptist church, the Methodist church, where I'm a member of, and the Baptist church and First Presbyterian, Witherspoon Street Presbyterian, where Shirley's a member of, always has received a lot of attention in Princeton, and rightfully so. But Morning Star has less of a congregation and has had, for many years, less of a Princeton-based congregation. As a matter of fact, right now, there's only one living member who lives in Princeton that still attends there, and she's immobile. That's Mamie Odom. Two? I'm sorry, two people. So, and I think it's important to share this with this commission. When Shirley and I, after we left the meeting, we went into the church with the pastor and Miss Brown, Shirley?
Yeah, that's Mamie's sister. Yes.
Mamie's sister. And I think both of us were kind of astonished to hear, you know, from the pastor, quite frankly, that he did not have the same historical perspective as a pastor of a historical church that we had as stakeholders and owners of the neighborhood we grew up and lived in. And part and parcel of that is there is a disconnect between that church kind of in the community to a greater distance than the other three churches I mentioned. So all that is background. I say this to say that right now, in the foreseeable future, and we got to focus on now, and I appreciate that Shirley said where we want to go, but for right now, we need to secure the church. We need to inspect the foundation of the church structurally. Our hope is that structurally it can be repaired, and hopefully the structural engineer won't say, I'm sorry, but there's nothing we can do. I'm sure that's not the case. But then there's the partnership or relationship with Mr. Bob Hillier, who has the bandwidth to take us from, you know, where it is in this current structure now, to rebuilding it into the structure it once was. But stop right there. We still have a situation where the most important part of what I'll share with you is that the decision, no matter what we do, is not for us to make. Me and Shirley got to hope and pray. Pray, thank you. That's not a pun, no pun intended. We got to hope and pray that Elder Barnes will work with us and we with him. And then the interplay with him and the congregation and the appreciation of history to make what Shirley described as our wish list a reality, because we've got to come to an agreement. And, you know, hopefully we can, you know, negotiate to that agreement, but the decision on what happens to that church and that property has nothing to do with the neighborhood. It's all up to the pastor and the church people. So we got our fingers crossed. That's number one. Yes, Tom. Go ahead.
And we, if I may add to that, when I talked to Pastor Bynes today, he is in agreement that that building could be turned over to us, but he's got to talk to his congregation and he's got to talk to his bishops. But as far as he is concerned, that building could be ours. But there's a lot of, as you said, there's a lot of paperwork and soul searching that we have to do.
Not to mention dollars.
Can I
That is true.
clarify?
And I did, and I also talked with Robert Hilliard, and he's going to call me tomorrow about what the possibilities are.
Can I clarify which building we're talking about? The church has two
There's-
buildings, if I understand.
There are two, there's actually three buildings. There's a
Three
little
buildings.
church, there's a little house, a little red house, white house, that was actually called a prayer house. That was their first church. Next to it is a parsonage, and next to that is the church.
And which of the buildings has the plaque in front of it, which I was reading?
The small church where they first worshiped, the little one that's they're thinking about demolishing.
Right. Now,
49.
We want that, we
49
want to
Park
save.
Avenue.
now that building is looking in very bad repair. What is the status of that building?
It's
condemned.
condemned,
It's condemned. Okay. So
but it's been like that
I'm,
for several years. So, you know,
Okay.
but it is not in good condition. Yeah.
I
Well, it
am,
sounds like this is starting to be a real discussion point.
Yes, it
and
is.
we
That's
do
why I
have-
said to do that.
Yeah, you're right. So we should really wait on this. Let's continue this discussion at the end of the meeting. And since it seems to be pretty complicated, and let's just head on to the minutes. Since we have 3 applications on deck. So I appreciate the beginning of this discussion, and I can understand how complicated it is. So let's continue it in a little while. The minutes are for February, last month's meeting, and I gotta tell you, Justin does such a good job. He's amazing. We're really thankful, Justin, that you keep doing these minutes, and just keep on doing a good job. So are changes to the minutes?
I had one question. Under announcements, it's really not a change, but just a question about what it says. Under 2 announcements, it's about the Affordable Housing Overlay Subcommittee. It says Chair Capizoli will present their findings to the planning board in the future. Are you going to present it to us before you present it to the planning board, at least in a memo or some form?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, yeah, we should talk about, you know, what we've recommended. And yeah, we don't, it's still kind of in a process. Nothing has changed. The overlay hasn't changed yet. I mean, I think the staff's aware we want some changes, but nothing's happened yet. So that maybe that's for another discussion point as well.
Sure. No, but I just wanted a clarification.
Okay, so are there changes to the minutes? If not, does someone want to move approval?
So moved.
Okay, thank you, David. Second?
Second,
Oh, thanks, Roger. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
Aye.
motion carries. All right, the second thing we have is the resolution which, now this is for 29 Lee Avenue. And Elizabeth sent out another, I think she sent it out twice, so hopefully everybody got that. It's pretty straightforward. It's just going to the, did it already go to zoning or,
It did,
okay,
Yeah.
and it passed, right?
yes, yep, and this
Okay.
is the demolition component.
Okay, so it's, so yeah, we just need to pass this, so it's on the record. Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
Seems silly not to.
Yeah.
So moved.
Thank you, Roger. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, I saw Frida. Okay,
Yeah.
Frida seconded. Okay, all in favor?
I
I see lots of hands. Okay, thank you. All right, we're gonna move on to 22 Parkside, which means I'm gonna go to the attendees.
So Julie's going to recuse herself.
Okay.
Justin's going to place you in the public pool.
Okay.
Thank you.
And David Shore is going to take over for chairing the meeting since Julie recused herself.
Okay. So we just had this in for concept review again, 2 sessions ago, 1 session ago,
February,
February.
yes.
So Elizabeth, how do we start with a formal review like we always do, or do we pick up from where
Yes.
we were? Or-
It's,
Okay.
yeah, if you would like me to do a summary of the report, I could do that before you talk to the applicants.
I think that's appropriate.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. So the applicants, Viega and Rezi Hayeri, I apologize, have filed an application to construct a new house on the site identified as block 9901, lot 6 on the Princeton tax map and further identifies 22 Parkside Drive. The property contains 1 acre and lies in the R3 zone of the former Princeton Township. The property falls in the municipal Drumthwacket Outbuilding Historic District specific to the Farmer's House and Dairy. The property is also within the New Jersey National Register of Historic Places, Princeton Battlefield, Stony Brook Village Historic District. I apologize. Let me just take a minute to bring the applicants over. I just want to take a break here. So sorry. I should have done that.
I think everyone other than Eric Holterman has been moved over already.
Okay. Justin, could you move him over? I don't know why I'm having a problem. Okay. This property is designated in Princeton's Historic Overlay District as Type 1 and Type 1. We don't get too many of these, but this is reviewed by HPC, not only from the right of way, from also anything visible within a historic district. So it's really the whole property. The applicant received 2 concept reviews for this project from HPC. One was on September 20th, 2021, and the second was on February 7th. 2022. So the applicant now has come before HPC and the zoning board because this requires variance relief with their formal application. And because of the variances, application is in the jurisdiction of the zoning board, which HPC serves as advisory to their board. This property lies in the southern portion of the municipality and is within a residential neighborhood. The site is located on the west side of Parkside Drive near the intersection of Princeton, Pike, Mercer Road. The Drumthwacket Outbuilding, Farmer's House and Dairy is one of 6 sub-districts in the Drumthwacket Outbuilding Historic District. It sits adjacent to the Cowborn and Dairy properties of this district. And there's some information there about the historic nature of the district. HPC has already heard the application for Mr. Freeze, but that's also for information for the applicant for them to know. So I'm just going to go down to the lower part, which talks about the property of the Drumthwacket Estate was developed with a manor house and several outbuildings. The manor house was built in 1835 and the design in the style of Greek revival. It is now the official residence of the New Jersey governor. When Pine developed the property, the estate's other buildings, as known as the drum bucket outbuildings, are really manors of their own. They did not construct simple serviceable wood houses, but instead built them of expensive stone and style as a testament to his enormous wealth. The 6 buildings were subdivided out and lie on their own lots separate from Drumthwacket's Manor buildings. These 6 outbuildings reflect the interest in Tudor revival rather than the Greek revival. So the current property consists of 3 historic structures, a garage, a pump house, and a windmill. These are historic to the site and were built in circa 1899. A 4th structure, a 1.5-story brick and wood frame house built around the mid-1950s, was approved by HPC to be demolished in 2015. One of the supporting arguments that HPC gave for approving for this demolition is they felt that this building was an intrusion into this very important cluster of historic structures in this important historic district. So as HPC knows, the applicant is coming before them to construct a largely 1-story contemporary style house with 2 existing historic structures on the property that's going to serve or function or located as bookends to the new building. It will be 4 bedrooms, 6.5 bathrooms with an attached 2-car garage. On the first floor, it's going to be approximately 4,900 square feet. It'll have 4 bedrooms, 5.5 bathrooms, a sitting area, study, kitchen and pantry, living room, dining room, family room, laundry room, mud room, and access to the garage. On the small second floor space above the garage, which is about 550 square feet, will accommodate 2 offices that open onto a terrace, a full bathroom, and a storage media. There will be a storage space. There'll be a media room, exercise room, full bathroom, an additional 4 storage space within the basement level. There is a large atrium as you enter the house that separates the private and public spaces. A multi-segmented pyramidal skylight is positioned over the center of this atrium. So other site improvements as part of this project is there will be constructing a secondary driveway, a pool, and a fence. So the new driveway will be on the northern end of the Parkside frontage, and it's going to curve past the front of the house and connect to the existing driveway to its south. And a portion of the existing driveway in front of the historic garage will be removed. There'll be a new 16 by 30 foot rectangular in-ground pool with stone coping that'll be built on the western end of the property. A new pool fence will connect to the existing pump house and the new house to its east and continue near the northwest and southwest property lines and tie into the existing historic garage. So within the report, there are details of the building components that are listed, just so you know that the variance for this application really is an existing nonconformity on the lot, because within Princeton Township, any property that fronts onto a right-of-way is considered having frontage. So this actually has 2 frontages. The Parkside Drive loops around the back and connects. So this property is kind of like a diamond shape, and each of the, I guess it's the east and west ends of the property required to have their minimum frontage, which is 150 feet. And this one is shy of about 100 feet. It's got almost 50 feet on there. So that's what their variance is for. Just to go down to the general comments and recommendations, the proposed house is designed in a contemporary style of a mid-century style house. The cedar wood incorporated into exterior building material will provide warmth and help reduce the solid mass of the mainly 1-story structure. The siting of the house should not block use of historic structures on the subject property or adjacent historic property, as commented by some HPC members at the February concept review. Some photo sims of the property's views into the property and the backdrop of the historic cow barn should be provided so HPC can ensure that these views are preserved. There is an existing water easement that's shown on the survey plan, so that should also be shown on the site plan. And within the comments for the applicant to address. They should address if this is a vacated easement or not, because it's within the area where the site development is. The proposed height of the top of the flat roof and the pyramidal skylight, those dimensions should be provided somewhere on the drawings. It is recommended any exterior LED lights should be in the warm spectrum and less than 300 K. It's also recommended the color of the fence, which kind of a light silvery color. To make it less visible, it's recommended for it to be darker. And details of the green roof, that should be revised as far as depth of the soil, volume, and the type of plant material. All proposed utilities should be underground. The true stucco and wood stain samples, a sample should be provided to the HPC office for our file. And it is suggested in HPC's memo to the zoning board that final details such as building material and green roof design and site improvements be deferred to HPC to be reviewed administratively or by a HPC subcommittee. So the other comments down below are really for the applicant to address, and that's all I have right now, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you. Should we have the applicant address those points now?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair and members of the board for hearing us. My name is Ryan Kennedy. I'm an attorney at Stevens and Lee for the applicant. Feel like we're all good friends here, having been to 2 concept reviews already. And let me just say how appreciative we are of the comments and the process that is really the way to go to get a good product in Princeton, whether you're in a historic district or not. As Elizabeth said, this is kind of unique as one of the few type 1s that you get. But be that as it may, we're very appreciative of all of your assistance, Elizabeth, and the volunteers as well throughout this process. We have since been deemed complete by zoning for, it seems kind of inconsequential, but there is that one variance that Elizabeth mentioned that we do need, which brings us to the zoning board. Much of this that you'll see today, you've seen before, and some of you twice, going back to September as we put these plans together. But we're excited to kind of show you the near final product and the results of this process. I just want to remind everyone that the applicants here are contract purchasers. So there is a bit of it may not seem like it because they were able to squeeze a little bit of extra time, but we're kind of at the end of our time rope for them to be able to purchase this property. So we're eager to get your final thoughts and move forward to zoning with this project while they're still contract purchasers in the site. One thing I'll just note on the outset, the water easement, just to make that very simple, was a private easement for the neighboring property owner. That easement extinguished by itself, by its own terms, once that property connected to public water to the town. There was a point where actually the well on this site in one of the kind of historic outbuildings is this pump building. That was actually the well for the neighboring property when it was subdivided. So they needed an easement to continue using it, but it hasn't been used by the neighbor for potable water for a long time. So we can certainly show it, but it is no longer an active easement, and by its own terms just kind of goes away. The star of tonight, Eric Holterman, our architect's done a lot of work putting this plan together. And again, thanks to all of the feedback from this committee and from Elizabeth. I think we're really excited about this final project. I'll also say that we've been working throughout with one of the neighboring property owners, and there are a few, the project I think ultimately is going to be slightly smaller than even our most recent plans that you've seen, and a lot of that reflects the great working relationship with the applicant and Glenn next door. They've been meeting, and it's always good when these concept reviews are great. Also great is when neighbors meet and talk about their plans. So we're pleased that this reflects the neighboring property owners, Glenn's comments as well. So with that, I'll turn the the floor over to Eric Holterman, who probably needs no introduction, but I know you've worked with not just this application, but many before, and perhaps in a truncated way, we can go through what you've seen, a couple times before now, talk about if there's anything that's changed since the last time you've seen it, and then go through Elizabeth's comments and get you the answers for everything you need there.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. Elizabeth, if I can share the screen.
Yes, you're able to.
Okay, so at the bottom here, you see 22 Parkside. Bree's house dairy is here, cow barn up here, and here's the garage that is on this property, and here is the well house that is on this property, and then the house is going to fill in this space. There was a question about trees. You can see the trees in the front will all be retained, but this tree and this tree will be removed. This shows the site limits of the property. Again, Glenn's house and the cow barn over here, and the house will be in here. A few shots that you've seen before of the site. In general, everything in this neighborhood, all the driveways are macadam. There is no curb. There is lawn just starting against the edge of the pavement. On the right, then you see the garage on the left side and the well house on the right, and the house will fill in between. These two trees are the two trees that will be removed. Two more shots of the garage. What we haven't shown here is the back of the garage, and I apologize, I don't have a photograph of that. The back of the garage actually does need some work. You won't see it from the applicant's house, but you do see it from the other two properties. And then the well building here, both buildings in, I'll say fair to good condition. Some more site views, Glenn Freese's house, the dairy barn to the left, the property that's actually closest. Here, this view is from farther back by the windmill, well house on the left, garage on the right, and then some other views then of looking towards the dairy, and then here you can see the cow barn beyond the garage. The garage is actually in the front, that's on our property. The barn in the back is the adjacent property. View from the street, trees in the foreground will be saved. There's the well house in the back. Again, just pointing out that the driveways here, all macadam, simple, no curbing, no edging, nothing else, all quite simple landscape. Existing survey, here's that water easement, that abandoned easement that Ryan mentioned, and then the configuration of the 4 existing buildings. And then the proposed arrangement here, here again is the garage building, here is the well house, and then here is the proposed house. Now, there has been a slight change here from the set that was sent to you based on our meeting with Glenn and talking about what happens at this end of the house. What we've done is in order to increase this dimension a little bit, we've increased this dimension by about 5 feet. And the house north, about 5 feet. And in order to accomplish that, because we have the prevailing setback line right along here, we've actually shortened this dimension right here by 5 feet. So where previously this hallway came straight down and came to a stairwell here, and the garage was farther forward and this was farther forward, now we've offset that, which allowed us to pull the garage back and pull this wall back. So in fact, this wall has been pulled back 5 feet from what was previously submitted. And the entire house then on the site has moved up about 5 feet and to the left about 2.5 feet, still staying just behind that prevailing setback line, which we need to do. But that movement gave us a little more room here, which is going to help us with stormwater management, turning radii and things like that. And it also improved the relationship of the end of the house to the well house so that we have just a section of straight fence that comes from the back corner of the well house to the front corner of the house with a gate in it. So that on this plan, you can see the fence then there's a gate right here between these two. And then the fence continues on the other side, uses the building as a fence, continues to run over to the property line, along the property line, behind the windmill, which is right here, those 4 posts. And then the fence runs along here and then back again along the cow barn and then turns into the garage. And then there's a small fence again, following the orthogonal configuration of the remains, the low stone wall. That's a low stone wall beyond the garage, which is remaining. And then the fence turns back to the existing house, or to the new house. So what I just described is really the only plan change. Otherwise, the plan has stayed pretty much as it was, a slight change to the basement, but really the main change is that this got a little bit smaller. Front elevation, the elevation from the main grade to the main roof, 15 feet 4 inches, and then the pyramidal skylight above that is another 4 feet 8 above that. So from the very top here to the ground is 20 feet. Again, as we've mentioned before, intentionally a lower 1 story, spread out on 1 story, so that it's clearly differentiated and in fact somewhat subservient to the much taller Tudor buildings next door. Also here you can see the green roof running across. That green roof, you'll see some photographs of it later. There are trays that are about 4.5 inches tall, and then the greenery that comes above the edge of the tray is again less than 4 inches. So the total thickness of the green roof on top of the main roof is about 8 inches. Some views from the street towards the house. So from the street, there will not be a lot of view of the well house, but the slight relocation that we just discussed of the house increasing this dimension means that from the street, there will be a bit more view of the garage. And I'll come back to some of the work on these other buildings, but with the garage, it has a modern garage door, which we would be looking to replace. So this is the street elevation. Much like you saw before, a bit of an adjustment to the driveway and walkway, both to reduce coverage and to simplify the turning radius. In general, from the plans that were submitted, there is a slight decrease to both coverage and FAR with this adjustment. This is the north side of the house. This is the back of the well house. And the rear of the house, which has quite a bit of glass, and as Elizabeth described it, a good description, I think, where the historic buildings sort of bookend the house, which wraps around between the two. This is the elevation facing Glenn Free's house, garage here, entrance garage doors here. Some of the elements for the house, pyramidal skylight. There are some skylights over 2 of the bathrooms. Here's a photograph of what that green roof looks like. You know, it doesn't have grass in it because grass needs to be mowed. Instead, this product has a vegetation that's a little bit bushier, so that it doesn't grow very tall, so that it stays close to the roof. And then a standard EPDM roof, and probably in a grayish color. Other colors outside, the stucco and an off-whitish color. Windows and doors will be the window frames will be clad, but the trim around the windows between the frames will be a stained wood to match that color, a darkish brown. In reference to the Tudor buildings next door. Brick, again, selected to refer back to the Tudor houses that have some brick on it. This brick will be at the chimneys and then also the entry porch, steps, and front walkway. At the rear of the house where we have those very large windows, those will be a western window system. Other windows through the house will be a Colby window system. Garage door, a Clopay garage door system, which when lights are on, have some illumination. They're frosted, you can actually see through them, but there is some illumination. Aluminum fence, we had initially selected a light bronze finish. I think that if there's the feeling that a darker color would be, we have no objection whatsoever. And then for the pool, a stone coping, no significant patio area around the pool. There's coping and then grass beyond that. Lighting is very, very straightforward. These lights above the garage doors, these bollard light, one of these bollard lights next to the walkway at the side door going from the garage up to the to where the side staircase is. Within the roof overhang at the entry, some simple down lights that will wash that area with some light. And then also at the front entry, a railing, and this has an LED strip built into the underside of the rail so that it's 100% indirect. You don't actually see any brightness there, but illuminates the stairs. I want to go back to some of Elizabeth's comments and make sure that I've addressed comments. Trees removed, we discussed. There is not any rooftop mechanical proposed. We haven't located the mechanical equipment yet, but the intention would be that it would be behind the house and not visible from the street. Gray EPDM roof. Historic buildings will be reused. The garage will be continue to be used as a garage, but probably not for a car. It'll be for storage, bicycles and things like that. In the well house, the entry doors will be restored and it will be used in relationship to the pool. Again, we haven't worked out all the restoration plans for the two outbuildings, but there's no plan for any significant changes to those buildings. We intend to keep them as they are, brick with the roofs that they have and with windows and doors that match the historic condition, including replacing the front door, the garage door on the garage. Roof drain, stormwater management is a concern here. And in fact, this side is probably the low part of the site. We intend to be very careful about how we handle stormwater. That roof drains will be collected, taken underground. We haven't because Yegi and Reza don't own the property yet. We actually haven't gone through the site and civil engineering design yet. But we'll be working with Van Note Harvey on that, including some stormwater management here to make sure that we don't have any flooding in this low area and that we address all of that water. Also, green roof actually holds water and slows the runoff of stormwater since we have a large roof. Landscape plan at the moment, not worked out much beyond what you see here, and there are not big landscape plans. I mean, the idea is to retain this sort of long view towards the windmill across a grassy area, and for all of this to retain as much of a open grassy area at the rear as possible, and then similarly at the front, keep the trees, the grass, adding this driveway, but otherwise no significant new landscaping at the front of the house. Height of the pool fence is 42 inches, and that is a code requirement that meets the minimum code requirement for the height. No problem to change the color, and then where it attaches to the buildings, we think that we would have a post. We wouldn't attach directly to the building. We would have a post next to the historic building, the well house, on both sides, and the same thing for the garage, and then the fence beginning at that post next to the building. LED at the handrails I described, and the timing on the bollard light. Typically with those, we use a astronomical clock and timer. where it will come on at dusk and then shut off at generally 11 o'clock, but that's a timer that can be set for whatever time we think is appropriate. Sustainable measures, insulation will meet or exceed. We have a lot of glass, so we in order to compensate for that, we need a lot of insulation. We have the green roof. The green roof also adds additional insulation on top of the R49 roof that we will already have. And the green roof, as I mentioned, also retains stormwater so that it slows the stormwater runoff into the ground. I think that, we've generally discussed other things. I think that I probably don't need to take more time to discuss anything else right now. I think that if Yegi, Reza, if you have some other things you'd like to add, now would be the time for that. And then after Yegi and Reza, then we can take some other questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Could you, can't see anyone. Would you please stop the share for a second? Oh, there we go. Thank you.
Okay.
You want to go?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Reza Hayeri. I'm a physician working at Mercy Catholic Medical Center. Nice meeting you all. We are very excited, and you have seen us before. And Yegi, my wife here, let her introduce herself.
Yeah, so hi everyone, Yegane, also known as Yegi Hayeri. Very nice meeting you. Those of you who've never met before, good seeing you, the rest. For those of you who don't know, I'm a professor at Stevens Institute of Technology, Civil and Environmental Engineering, Systems Engineering, more recently, doing lots of sustainability work, hence, my passion for the green roof, which is relevant here. We have two daughters, age of 6 and 8, and we've been living in Princeton area since 2018. Very involved in the community, especially in the education sector. I'm a trustee of the French American School of Princeton, working very closely with Princeton Common Grounds. So it's the 4 of us, and also my mother, who will be living with us in this beautiful house, hopefully, that Eric designed for us. We're very, very excited. So looking forward to this discussion. And again, thank you so much. So let's just get things going.
All right, then. Thank you. Elizabeth, have we satisfied the questions? Where's Elizabeth? She's just letters. All right, well, I'll carry on then. Let me first say that I'm working with 2 screens today. I finally figured that out. So sometimes it looks like I'm looking away from the meeting and I'm just looking at the drawings enlarged, which is a great way to do things. Only took 2 years to figure this out. I should say that I am a broker associate with Callaway Henderson Sotheby's International Realty, and I believe it's our firm that has been marketing the lot that they're looking at. And I want to go on to further say that I have no financial interest in the company or this transaction in any way whatsoever, and that I also want to say that nobody from the firm or the owners have ever approached me about voting one way or the other on this project. So it's completely clean and open, as it should be, but I felt I needed to say that. The next thing I want to say is one of my favorite properties in the world is Shelburne Farms up in Vermont, which is another large kind of show off your wealth experimental farm, kind of like this property. And it sits on Lake Champlain, and that has a whole endowment behind it to make it a museum and cultural center and learning place. This is very different. It's exciting to see that the buildings that are on the property have been preserved, and that developing this lot has actually allowed the other property that it was subdivided from to continue to have owners that could afford to take care of the cow barn. I always look at buildings in the size of their roofs or roof, and that is a giant property, so I can see why they wanted to sell off this lot and be able just to take care of what they have next door. I'm going to put it around for questions for everybody, but I think we're pretty up to date on questions. It looks like Tom has a question. Go ahead.
Yes, first, thank you, David. I'm sure what you meant when you said that it's a property for showing off the wealth. You're talking about Drumthwacket as it was in Moses Taylor Pine's time, and not
Indeed,
not
indeed.
not in our present friend's presence, although they're rendering a beautiful rendition. So, very simple question. First of all, congratulations to the couple on what looks like a very interesting design. I'm just a commoner here, but best of luck to you there. What will the fence around the property be composed of? Will it be a wire fence or is a visually impervious fence at 42 inches, I think, or 48 inches high, as you said?
It's a fence built out of square stock aluminum, and you can see through it. I mean, it meets the vertical things. The vertical pieces are about 4 inches apart, and then there's a
Part, I would think, by code.
yeah, and just a lightweight aluminum member runs along the top, so no heavy rail or anything like that on the top, and no mesh or anything like that. I mean, it's just to keep kids from being.
Of course. Does it have a color?
A color. We originally looked at a light bronze color. Elizabeth mentioned in her comments that a dark color, a dark brown or a black, might be less visible, and we would be fine with that. That's okay.
Okay.
Thomas, just to let you know that there was a product sheet for the fence in the package.
I saw that.
Yeah.
I
Go ahead.
Go ahead,
I
Frida.
wanted to make, go ahead. Should I go ahead?
Yeah, please.
Okay, I just wanted to make a quick comment on the fence as well. And I agree with Elizabeth about the brown. I'm wondering if you could match or come close to the exterior, the brown of the exterior wood elements. That might be a nice way to tie it into to the house.
I think that we should be able to, a standard anodized aluminum brown is a dark brown. So I think we could certainly look at that. Yes.
Yes, I'm going to be redundant because I thought the same thing about the fence when you said should it be a different color, that it would blend in with the wood of the house. But then I saw the railing and the lights, and the railing and the lights are a light color. So I thought, especially the one that's around the pool, that it would blend in with the lights and the railing. So, but I think there's more brown than there is the that light color.
That's you're
I think
exactly right. The lights on the house, we have the dark brown color. Correct.
Yeah, but there's some standing lights that look like they're kind of a gray color. That's what I was talking about. But I think I think being a darker color blends in more with the house.
Okay.
So the lights that are like independent bollards.
Yes.
Yeah, that light is also available in the dark brown color. So I think that we could get everything in that dark brown.
Makes sense.
Frida, anything else?
No, that's it for me. It's looks like an exciting project, and I think yeah, if they take they've already answered all of Elizabeth's questions, so I think we're good.
Roger?
No, I'm good. I think that we've seen this is the third time. So
yes.
Third time's the charm.
Yeah, I think everything's answered. I made a little list of notes from the presentation, but I think everyone's asked those questions. The green roof was my big question. That's going to be a natural array of plants that don't get very tall, so it won't look shaggy, overgrown. Will there be a need to trim that every year just to keep them?
They recommend an annual trimming. That's exactly right. But even in that, it still stays at about 8 inches above the roof surface, not much more.
Good.
I wanted to mention one other thing that I neglected to mention before, is that the well house still has we believe it has a functioning well. If possible, we would like to use that well for site watering and things like that, rather than using the water system in the street.
I think you showed some brickwork for, was it paving and chimneys, and it looked like it was a running bond pattern. Is that correct?
I think the picture may actually have shown a Flemish bond, but I think that for what we're doing, we're probably looking at doing a running bond.
Okay. Right. The only other note I have on my sheet here, Elizabeth, is do we need to ask for specs for the work when they actually work on the two older existing structures? Do we need to see that, or?
Yes, so if you're doing improvements to the historic structures or even future landscape, that is something that's under the purview of HPC, and we could either do that depending on the extent, administratively subcommittee, or back to the HPC. So it depends, I think, what you're going to do to the extent for HPC to determine how comfortable they are with that.
Good. Oh, I just noticed Elric's here. Elric, your comments.
I apologize. It took me better part of an hour to figure out how to get into this Zoom call. And I didn't have any of the visuals beforehand, so I feel like I didn't hear the presentation, and I'm going to somewhat reluctantly defer on this one. But I do see, what I did see is remarkably improved over what I first saw a better part of a year ago.
Oh yeah. Any other comments?
I just wanted to come back, since it seems like there are no more comments or questions, and just very briefly kind of like reiterate on what Ryan said at the beginning, and just express our gratitude and appreciation for the board, Miss Kim especially, for working with us. Towards the beginning of February was really tough. This was you mentioned exciting. It's been a roller coaster, because as it was mentioned, we're not the owners, we don't have the lot. So it's been really lots of like ups and downs, and but what we've seen, in the township, and with Eric, with Ryan, with Mr. Glenn Fries, which we're very, very grateful to, because he's been working with us, meeting with us. Just the level of cooperation and collaboration that we've been seeing from anyone, it's been beyond amazing. So just to say thank you. Yeah, we really appreciate everything that everyone has done for us.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I just want to say thank you for coming for 2 concept reviews, and also talking to your neighbor and working with them. I think HBC really appreciate both those items.
Dave?
Yep.
I noticed we have about 21 participants, and before the board makes its recommendation, maybe you should ask whether or not there are any other neighbors or anybody else would like to share their thoughts with the board.
Yes, please. And I guess Justin will coordinate that. I don't know how that works.
Yes.
If they could just virtually raise their hand if they're interested in speaking, we'd appreciate that. I'm not seeing any virtual raised hands, and judging by the names, they might be here for other cases too.
Okay. Leighton, did you have any comments you want to offer?
I would just like to say that hats off to the architectural design. It looks to me to be a beautiful home. I think I'd like to live there. Very well, very, very well done. It's beautiful, beautiful. Thank you.
Elizabeth, remind me, we need to have a resolution, or is this a letter to the?
It's going to be a memo from you. I don't know, but I think you also want to have a
Consensus?
Yes, you could do a vote, which is always clean and simple, to see that people are all in agreement. That's usually the easiest case. If you want me to do a roll call, just let me know.
Okay, so
And you need someone to make a motion as well.
right, so we would be looking for a motion for preparing a letter in support of this project, and we'd like a roll call on that now.
I so move.
Second?
Second,
Roger? Okay, Elizabeth.
Okay. Mr. Shore,
Yes.
Mr. Endersby,
I abstain.
Ms. Satterfield,
Yes.
Mr. Shatskin,
yes,
Ms. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Pyle.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Okay,
Thank you
thanks.
very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay tuned for that housewarming party.
We're ready.
Now we're talking.
Invite
Okay,
us all.
Bring
We
Julie
will.
back in.
Justin, could you bring Julie? I think I'm working on the laptop, so I don't have all of my skills here. I apologize.
Yes, I've just brought her over. It should just be a second.
Thank you. Yeah, I can't bring anyone over. I don't know why. I'm usually do the desktop, but I have no functions. I don't know why, but I can't do any of that stuff.
Good job, David.
Oh, thank you.
So our next application is 87 Lee Avenue.
Okay.
Um,
Justin, I think you want to bring Dozier over and John DeCruz.
I've just done that, so it should be 1 second.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hi there.
Hello. Hi.
Hi. So we'll have Elizabeth start off by giving a summary of her report. This is pretty straightforward. Only HPC, we have the jurisdiction here, and I think this is really straightforward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the applicant, Dozier Hammond III and Jane Sloan, have filed an application for historic preservation plan review to demolish a rear porch as part of the improvements to their house. The subject property sits on the northwest corner of Lee and Ray Streets and is identified as block 6903, lots 14 and 15 on the Princeton tax map. It's located in the R3 residential zone of the former Princeton Township and falls within the Witherspoon-Jackson Historic District of the municipal zoning overlay map. Witherspoon-Jackson is designated in Princeton Historic Overlay as Type 2. There is a property survey that was provided by Weiss Preservation in 2015, which is part of your package, which gives you a little information. This property was built circa 1920 and is classified as contributing to the overall setting and significance of this district. The building is two-story vernacular twin L-shaped house. It is an asphalt shingle cross gable roof with a front facing gable. In the rear is a small one-story addition with a small covered porch attached to the east, which is the porch that the applicant wishes to remove, and a large enclosed porch off to the west. I'm just kind of going to go through this really quick. The front porch windows are cross-framed and the street-facing doors paneled with an east side light. Brick steps from the front porch lead to a concrete sidewalk that extends to the public sidewalk. An attic louver is located in the front gable peak of the attic. So as the chair had said, this really is a straightforward application. The applicant is coming to remove a porch that is non-functional. There is no door that actually accesses that small one-story addition that it's attached to. And all the other improvements the applicant is doing is really for functionality. They're changing double doors to a single door. They're replacing some windows in the basements. They're infilling one, which is underneath actually the enclosed porch, which there's no reason for that. So, that type of thing. They're also going to do some repair, scraping and repainting of existing windows. There is a fence and gate that faces onto Ray Street, which they'd like to replace. The design's a little bit different and the gate is a little bit larger. And I couldn't tell if it has a canopy or not, if it just has like a archway type thing. So that is one of the comments I'm going to ask the applicant to discuss. The house is also going to be painted, and there's going to be replacement of the front steps. There is bluestone there, which they're going to reuse, but right now it does not have a stoop, which they would like to have. So they'd like to build a stoop with the same material and extend that walkway material also down from their steps to the public right of way. And as far as the comments go, I mean, very simple. I think the HPC really appreciates when any property owner takes care of their property and takes the care that it seems like these applicants want to do. They're not asking to enlarge it or anything. They just want to make it more functional and still be in good condition. Just simple questions is the color of the porch for the front steps and the side walls, are they going to be the same color or different color? Asked about the further detailing about that gate over, arch canopy on top. And if there's any other sustainable measures that were as part of this application. And I forgot to say that HPC's attorney, Mr. Schmier, had reviewed the requirements for the demolition, and he has determined that this application can be reviewed by the HPC. They have made all the requirements. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to turn it over to the applicants.
Okay.
Quick question, is John
Ed,
on this?
sorry. You're on mute.
We're on mute.
Oh, okay.
No, Ed is on mute. You guys are fine. Ed, you're on mute.
Ah.
Yeah.
Dozier, Jane, the testimony you're about to give, is it truthful?
Yes.
Thank you very much. It's all yours.
Okay.
A question, is John DeCruz on this now? I don't see him.
Justin, I know you were bringing him over, but I don't see him either.
So I moved him over. I don't see his name anymore, though. There's a Sarah DeCruz in the attendees.
Oh, okay. If it's Sarah DeCruz, I'm sure that's John.
Move them over.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's his.
Okay, great.
Okay.
I've just promoted them to panelists, so they should appear in a second.
Oh, excellent. Thank you.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate your hearing this. We're basically redoing our house in a way that to replace some areas that need attention and bring them back up there. We've had a front porch that is falling apart. We need a new gate that blew down during the wind a couple of weeks ago that needed to be replaced. So that's come true. And what we're going to do is turn it over to John DeCruz to address Elizabeth's questions that you all received. There are only 3 of them basically after the first mention. So we're going to turn it over to him, but we are happy to answer any other further questions or have John answer them if you have any. As Elizabeth said, it's pretty straightforward, and thank you all for listening to us. So.
You're on mute, Mr. DeCruz.
Oh,
there.
Okay. Can everyone hear me now?
Yeah. Yep.
Yes.
So yes, hi. Thank you very much for listening and addressing our application. As Elizabeth said, I think it's pretty straightforward. It's mostly repair and replacement. We're keeping the house in essence as is and just replacing some of the elements that are in disrepair. To address the 3 comments that Elizabeth had, and we don't have a formal presentation together, but I'm happy to bring up any of the images that we had previously submitted. So the first comment was regarding, or the first question is whether the porch at the new front entry steps is going to match the existing, and the answer to that is yes. And I can bring up that image if that's helpful. Do I need to share my screen?
You can share it, but I don't know if you need to. I think that was just a question. I think that the photographs show the color, so just wondering if it was going to be the same or not. That was all, just clarifying.
Yes.
Thank you.
So, yes, it will be the same. It's that yellowish color. Item number 2 was asking for more detail on the fence that's going to be replaced on Race Street. So after receiving your question, we did put together a single slide that tries to give you more detail and explain exactly what the intention was for that area. And for this, I will share my screen. Where is the share screen? Okay, can everyone see this?
Yep. Yes.
All right, so it is a little bit different than what was submitted in the application, and I'll just walk everyone through it. And then I also have some additional images that can show what is there today. In essence, right now, let me just, sorry, just bear with me here for 1 second. Oh, anyway, there's the existing entry gate is here now. The idea is to replace the entry gate with a new fence that matches the existing height of the existing fence and actually move the gate over to the side, towards the right. From the fence gate to the sidewalk, the idea is to maintain the existing concrete step, extend the concrete a little bit to the right, leading to the new gate, and then through the new gate, once you go through, the concrete that's on the other side would be removed and then replaced with a brick patio, which is a little bit different than what was in your report. I think there was a little bit of confusion on exactly what we're doing, but the intention is to keep the existing brick, keep the existing concrete step on the exterior of the gate, add a little bit of concrete, and then once you go through the gate, the existing concrete that's on the other side is going to be removed and replaced with new brick patio to match the existing brick patio. Directly behind this area here is where the trash cans are kept. So the idea is to maintain a portion of the fence to hide the existing trash cans from the street. So this gets enlarged. The fence is basically 5 foot 2 inches tall. To the left of the gate, it would be 7 feet wide. The gate itself is 4 foot 2 inches wide and 5 foot 2 inches tall. And then there would be a 24-inch portion of fence on the right-hand side. We are omitting the little trellis that you would walk under. And mainly the reason for that is that in the township, or the former township, we're only allowed to have a maximum height of 6'6" for a fence, which this would be over that dimension. So from a zoning point of view, to meet the zoning, we've decided to just remove the little bit of trellis and really simplify the design. I would like to add as an aside that I'm not the one that designed this. We're presenting it as part of the rest of the application. But Dozier and Jane are working with, I believe, a landscape person who is actually the one that came up with the design for the gate and the fencing on both sides. I think the intention for the gate itself is that it's going to be a steel random grid that will be primarily transparent, so you can actually see into the yard from the street.
John, can I just ask you a question? So you're saying that you're going to keep that existing concrete step and section there, and then you're going to extend it on top a little bit?
So this little triangle, so the existing gate is, you know, within the path of where the step is. So the gate would actually be here. And the new gate is being moved to the right. And then to allow access to the gate, we're going to extend this little triangular piece of concrete. So the step stays where it is, but the triangular piece of concrete allows you to move basically to where the new gate is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, is that gate opening out or in?
That's a very good question. I'm assuming it would open in.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it would.
And here, I can just show everyone what's there now. So this is that existing condition.
It's not- it's
We're
coming-
not, yeah. You might have to stop sharing and share again.
Oh, you can't see that?
Right.
Okay. Is that
Okay.
visible now?
Yep.
So this actually has now fallen down. So right here on the left, this is actually, there's lots of vines growing on it, but that's actually a trellis that is also man-made that has plants growing on it. That is basically fallen down. And the idea is that on the left-hand side, the new fence basically extends to the edge of where the existing trellis used to be. So the trellis and the existing gate become fence. The gate itself moves to the right, and then there'd be another 24-inch piece of fence to the right of the gate.
And then that extended sidewalk is going to be that triangular piece behind that privet hedge or whatever hedge that is, right? So there is no possibility of a slope like you need for that step because of the hedge. Correct?
I'm
Right.
sorry, do you mind repeating that question again? I wasn't following you.
So the triangular piece of sidewalk that's going to extend for the new gate location is going to be behind the hedge, and the hedge is just kind of edge it so.
Yeah, some of these hedges I think are being pulled back slightly to allow for that new triangular piece of sidewalk. But right now, as you can see, I think, sort of the path that's already been worn going along the side of the existing gate is really where the new gate's going to go.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Sure.
All right. So I guess if we could go back to our gallery view. I'll throw it out, open it up if there are any questions. Just to say, I think a lot of this is really would normally be either ordinary maintenance or administrative, but because there is a demolition involved, we are not allowed to do that administratively. So pretty much all demolition has to come before the commission. So we appreciate you doing this. I know it doesn't seem like a lot of decisions, but because of the way our demolition ordinance is set up, that's kind of how it happens. So any
Thank
other
you.
questions for the applicant? I mean, we always appreciate, oh yeah, Shirley, go ahead.
I don't have a question, but I'm just so glad that residents who have been in the Witherspoon-Jackson area for so long are staying in their homes and just improving them. I just have a question about this little porch that you want to demolish. I see a Buddha on the porch, and I just thought this would be a nice area to just sit and meditate or read. I have nothing to do with the fact that you wanted to go, but I just thought that would be just a little space to just sit and relax. But I'm just so glad, Jane and Dozier, that you're staying with us and all you're doing, you're just improving on it. And God
Thank
bless
you.
you.
We'll keep that space warm.
And now we'll have access to sit with it, because right now there's no way to get up to that little porch.
Yeah.
The steps were taken away 20 years ago. The actual door to that little porch was cemented over. So
I see that.
It is just, a freestanding thing, and we decided we'd like to have the space back, but we'll keep the Buddha and the other things on it. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. And again, like Shirley said, we're so appreciative of longtime neighbors that are improving their property and staying here, and we appreciate you so much.
Thank you.
If there's no further questions or discussion, would someone like to make a motion?
Excuse me, Julie, I think we ought to open it up, see if there's any neighbors.
Oh, sure. Oh, sure. Absolutely. Anyone raising their hand?
Not yet. We'll give them a minute. Nothing so far.
No, okay. Well, then I think we're clear. So is there a motion?
I make a motion.
Thank you, Shirley. Obviously to approve.
Yes, to approve. Yes.
Is there a second? I see David.
Yeah, I second the motion.
Oh, thank you. All right, so I guess we'll need the roll call.
Ms. Capozzoli,
Yes.
Mr. Shore,
Yes,
Mr. Endersby, is he not?
I think,
here?
I think he dropped, I think he went off again.
Okay,
Oh, well.
Ms. Satterfield,
Yes.
Mr. Shatskin,
Yes.
Ms. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Pyle.
Yes,
Thank
Motion
you,
is passed.
guys. Thank you for coming in. We really
Thank
appreciate it.
Thank you
Good
all
luck with
very
your
much.
project.
We
Thank
appreciate it.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, well, good to see you.
Okay.
So I don't know if we'll get Elric back again, but we'll see.
Justin, we're going to have, I think, the three top people on there down to James. I'm not sure about Thomas Foster, and I actually, oh, Ryan's still here. Good.
Yep,
Okay.
yep. So Akash, Dan, and Jim, if you could bring those two over, exactly, or those three,
Yes.
excuse me, over.
Yes.
Perfect.
And Thomas Foster is not with you, correct, Ryan?
Well, I think he's with the project, but we're not, I don't believe he'll be speaking.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
All right, so just to let everyone know what's going on, this is 39 Linden Lane, which is from Simplify Living. It's an application that will be going to the planning board. And so our comments will be collected in a memo and then we'll be sending them on to the planning board. So I'll start off, Elizabeth sent out a report. And if you want to summarize that, we'd really appreciate it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just want to say right off that Mr. Shatskin had advised us that this building has already been demolished. So the report will be updated for the planning board. So if I don't catch it while I'm doing the summary, please know that the existing structure has already been removed. So the applicant Simplified Living LLC has filed an application pursuant to the Princeton Borough Land Use Code for a minor site plan with variances. The applicant proposes to build a new multifamily housing structure with parking. The site is identified as block 33.03, lot 69 on the Princeton tax map and falls within the former borough R4 zone. It's further identified as 39 Linden. The property is located on the east side of the street between the crossroads of Nassau and Spruce Street, and it falls within the suggested Tree Street Historic District in the historic preservation element of the Princeton Community Master Plan. So HPC is reviewing this as a courtesy review because it is in the historic preservation suggested elements of the master plan. However, because it is not a true designation, they were not required to fill out a application of historic preservation plan review. As the chair had stated, this application is in the Board of Jurisdiction of the Planning Board, and HPC will provide their comments and the chair's memo to them. So let me see if I gotta modify this because there's no house anymore. So the lot is 50 feet wide by 182.54 feet long. The lot is consistent with other properties within this neighborhood. However, the lot size, the lot depth is a lot larger than most, and there's only another property on this street with a similar dimension as that. Many houses on this block have garages that are attached, detached, and located in the rear yards. An exception to this is a building with an attached front-facing garage, which is a newer construction. Still present on the east side of this neighborhood are carriage or stable houses in the rear yards that now serve as a barn or garage storage. So the proposed applicant wishes to construct a 3-story, 3-unit residential building. It'll have a front-facing gable roof. Peak dormers are designed over the second floors, and shed roofs will be placed over front entrances and sliding doors to the decks. Each unit will have 2 bedrooms and 2.5 bathrooms, and the height of the new structure will be 32.6 feet. The building's first and second floors will be above grade with a partial above grade walkout basement on the north elevation with secondary access doors. Each unit will have a 12 by 16 foot deck off the living room that will also be off the north elevation. 3 parking spaces are provided with this project, and they're located in the rear of the property with a new driveway that'll run between the new buildings, north property line. Separate entrances are provided for each unit. The entrance for the street-facing unit, which is labeled A, faces the street. The middle unit, B, their entrance faces the south elevation, and unit C faces the rear yard, which is also the east elevation. A long flight of stairs to the front and rear unit entrances are required due to the grade. Pedestrian access to the front doors is provided from the driveway parking area to unit A and C. No access is provided for unit B, and we'll circle back to that at the end because the presentation, the PowerPoint presentation that was presented and submitted to the planning board shows that there have been some modifications to that. Individual trash recycling closures are located off the north elevation, and that there is a 9-foot driveway with paved tire lanes and a center grass strip, which will be installed from the right of way to the length of the building and for the 2 end parking spaces. New AC units are proposed off the front elevations of each unit. And as part of this application, 12 existing trees are proposed to be removed. A landscape plan was also submitted as part of this project. Pursuant to the engineer and zone report, which is dated January 24th, 2022, the applicants require variance relief for each lot for minimum lot size, lot depth, minimum rear yard setback, and a variance for non-continuous open space. I don't think that that's something that HPC really wants to get concerned about. However, we will leave it up to the applicant and his attorney to address it if HPC feels it's important. Again, this plan is being reviewed under the criteria of as if it was a historic district. This would be considered, so now I apologize. Oh, no, it's correct. It's considered non-historic structures since there's an existing structure that currently exists anymore. So we're going to move down to the comments. So the Linden Lane neighborhood is comprised of late 19th and early 20th century houses that are unique to the suggested street trees historic district and should be respected with new developments and modifications to existing houses. Oh, okay, so that's house is no longer there. Okay, the new site development is not an ideal fit for this residential neighborhood. The building mass in relation to other buildings along the street is large. It does not read as a single or 2-family dwelling, which is typical for this neighborhood. Adding some common architectural features that are found on the time period buildings in the neighborhood would make the new building more compatible to the streetscape. The very visible walkout basement level and multiple decks on the north elevation does not represent the neighborhood character. The height of the building, a great differential between the north and south side of the property, further accentuates the non-residential appearance, and the long flight of steps to accommodate the 7-foot elevation change for unit 8A, which faces onto the street, amplifies these features. Although a large deck and a walkout basement are positive amenities for a new house, its visible impact, however, can be jarring to the streetscape. Relocating these features to the rear yard where it would be less visible or screened from the right of way would be considered more acceptable. So the Historic Preservation Office also echoes the comments of Sprabney, which was reflected in the applicant's February 3rd, 2022 PowerPoint presentation, which is, I believe, which was connected to the link that was sent to the HPC members. It further suggests, sorry, has to do with the house, so obviously no modifications to existing house. But besides what the Sprabbits said, I think that they talked about a duplex in the front and the third unit in the back in a separate building. The applicant could also consider just putting one in the front and two in the back. So that's just food for thought. Although not spelled out on the architectural plans, the elevation drawings represents 3 distinct building type of surface treatments: a stone or stone-like material on the basement level, horizontal clapboard on the first floor, and vertical clapboard on the second floor. The applicants asked to discuss what material will clad the building and the proposed material for the roof. Pedestrian access to the front doors of the units is challenging. Unit A and B will require a lot of work to get up to the doors. Unit A has about a 10-foot climb from the driveway to the front door, and Unit C, which is a rear one, has about a 12-foot climb. The applicant's PowerPoint presentation shows a revised plan that provides access from the parking area to Unit B, which the plans that we had in our set did not show. So that way there is access from the parking area to that unit. However, it would seem to be desirable to have some direct access from the right of way instead of someone having to go up the driveway, around the rear, and along the side again to get to that front door. According to the site section, there is about 3.5 foot elevation difference from the grade on the south property line to the building finished first floor elevation. The applicant has asked if it's possible to lower that elevation on the first floor to bring the building height down on the north elevation. So again, so there isn't so much of that part of the building showing. Each deck is supported by 2 exterior columns. Vehicles will be driving under the deck on a 9-foot wide driveway. There is concern that someone traveling on this could possibly hit or bump into these posts. Snow removal is also a concern with these columns, and it's unclear from these drawings how parked vehicles will be able to turn around to drive forward onto Linden Lane. So the applicant is asked to present how that will be maneuvered. The applicants also asked to discuss the distance between the new construction to adjacent houses and how the new building's proximity may impact them. And I believe that's more specific to the south elevation. The applicants asked if the current access easement, which is for that driveway access, can still be used for the redevelopment of this property. A significant number of trees have been removed, and the applicant has asked if the consideration of preserving them was taken into thought when they were doing their site layout. And the applicant also should discuss the roof drain discharge, where that is being drained. Right now, the property does drain to the northeast corner and out to the street. And it continues to do that. There is a lot more water that's going to be discharged to those locations just because the amount of impervious. The other component is that the slope in the front yard currently is about 15%. So that's pretty steep. But because of the way that it's going to be regraded and designed, the slope is actually going to be increasing to over 33%. So it's recommended that some type of stabilization of that slope be made. Screening for the middle unit, Unit B, does not have any screening for the air conditioning unit, so it's recommended that something be provided for that. And the applicants asked what type of sustainable measures they have applied for this application. I'm available for any questions for HPC. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Elizabeth. I just want to turn it over to the applicant because I know you guys have presentations and you've changed some things. So if you want to go ahead and update us.
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely. Madam Chairman and the rest of the board, thank you so much again for hearing us tonight. Still Ryan Kennedy from Stevens and Lee here for Simplify Living, Inc. We've got Akash, who's the principal for Simplify Living here tonight, as well as our site engineer and planner, Jim Kamalik, and then Dan Fortunato, who's the architect. I do think it would be easiest for us to step through some of the slides we've put together because it does show the changes. A lot of the restraints or or reasons for some of these design are unfortunately taken from the zoning. Well, when we get to the end, we'll hear a little bit about how we, SPRAB, and frankly, we, and sounds like Elizabeth and maybe you guys think that splitting it into two separate structures is more in keeping with the neighborhood. We don't disagree. Unfortunately, that's going to require a use variance and something that the planning board can't necessarily grant. So we definitely want to collect as much feedback on that as possible. Ultimately, the zoning in this zone, while allowing single family duplex multiple dwellings, apartment building, or attached dwellings, which is what the zoning and planning department kind of felt this was, though when we go through some of the variances, you'll see that doesn't really make a lot of sense. Not to get into too many of the variances, but ultimately these are 3 units that are connected in one building. There's not a subdivision though. There's not really a separate yard for each unit. There is a requirement for common space, which we have, but ultimately there was the thought to kind of graft a traditional townhouse subdivision project rules on top of this. And when you do that, you get a whole list of kind of wonky variances that don't really reflect what we're trying to do or what this project really is. But kind of even more key to everything than those are the unfortunate restraint that a duplex cannot have an ADU, unfortunately. So you couldn't have a two family in the front or the back with another unit separately under the new ADU rules, nor could you take either attached dwellings, which is the code for what I think the zoning department would think is your traditional apartment building, or multiple dwellings. Sorry, multiple dwellings being your traditional apartment building, and attached dwellings being your traditional townhomes. And those cannot be separated, unfortunately. Once you separate it, you either need 2 lots or a use variance. And while that might make the best plan, this the schematics and layout here are a bit a function of the zoning. So what kind of taking a cue from Elizabeth's comment and ending with the environmental, I think if it's all right, I'll share my screen and we'll go into some slides we put together, and we can start. Akasha, let's just introduce yourself, and we can talk about some of the green features of the development. I know that's a major both selling point and source of pride for the way you develop these buildings. But if we could just take a minute and talk about all the things that you're putting in here, since that's what Elizabeth asked, most recently.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Madam Chair and board members. My name is Akash Guliani. I represent Simplify Living, Inc. I'm the applicant. In terms of, I think, thank you, Ms. Kim. She did a really good job explaining in terms of what we are doing with our site. So in terms of explaining some of our sustainable green initiatives, I'll probably start with right over here. So we are on our site where all our units are going to be electric powered in terms of all our appliances. And so there would be no gas coming into the property. We initially started with having that concept of kind of building it the traditional way, bringing the gas lines, bringing an electric line. But we went back and looked at some of the other comments that we had received on another project we were in front of planning board, and really tried to take a direction where Princeton wants their developers to go, and how we can achieve that, and also something that we can build that way with cost effectively. So we went back and sort of just decided that there is going to be no gas line. So in terms of how we are the type of appliances we have is for stovetop, I think that was one of the big ones, and the dryer was one of the big ones. We already had all the other appliances in terms of our water heater. That's a heat pump that takes the energy from inside the home and heats the water. And so we took that same concept, and we also have the heat pump, heating, ventilation, and cooling system. With the stove, we went with the induction cooktops, and the dryer, we're also going with the induction dryer. So that's really, there's no carbon monoxide coming into the house. That really betters the inside indoor air quality. And we have a lot of green certifications that we're going with. We didn't think LEED was good enough for us to just go with the LEED. We are actually going with a passive home certification. I was just a couple of weeks ago, I was in a passive home builder training. So it's very exciting. And it sits a little bit above LEED, a little bit different. So I'll quickly talk about that too. So as you can see on this one, these are all high performance homes. They're all electric townhomes. The heat pump is the HVAC is a heat pump. They're very quiet. We're gonna have EV chargers on our site on the 3 parking spaces in the back. For LEED, we are targeting gold or platinum. From the inside perspective, we're targeting the EPA Indoor Air Plus, the DOE ZER, New Jersey Clean Energy Program, and the passive home certification. So these are all targets, and with passive home, it really it takes it to the next level in terms of how the houses, these houses get insulated, what kind of windows and doors that have to be used. Most of the, something like if you look at Marvin, if you look at Anderson windows, or these mainstream windows, those windows cannot be used. They just do not have that kind of energy efficiency that these passive homes require. Generally, they say when you do your blower door test, if you're between 5 and 10, a normal code home that's built under standard building department has to achieve somewhere between 8 and 10 AC air changes per hour. So if you go below 5, that's something a high performance home. We're actually shooting for 0.06. So it would be an extremely, extremely, extremely airtight home. And that's extremely, that would use a very, very low energy in terms of the energy coming into the house. And with all these variables, we are also looking into doing the solar panel. So most likely, we do have a framework that would basically power most of the house. If we do select, there's a selection between Fierce Plus and Fierce Plus Source Zero. So if you see on this chart on the right bottom, you'll see Fierce Plus and Fierce Plus Source Zero. The difference between those two is really Fierce Plus Source Zero is that all the power that's coming in to your house has to get satisfied with the solar panels. Those are some of the green initiatives we have in play for this project, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll say some of these are set in asphalt, so to speak. There is a road opening moratorium on Linden coming up, so this will be. And the decision was made for it to be an electric home with heat pumps, and that is sealed in asphalt because there's no one's opening up that road for the next 5 years to put a gas connection here. Now that that's been set.
Wow. Okay. Well, thank you. Could we move on to the elevations? That would be great.
Sure. Let me bring up. We've got Dan Fortunato and Jim Kamalik. I think everyone's familiar with where this site is. I will hover for a minute here with Jim Kamalik here. Here's the part of the neighborhood that we're talking about. Outlined in blue is the subject property, and I think as Elizabeth mentioned in her intro about the prevailing use patterns in this part of the neighborhood, both with lots that are much smaller with other, maybe carriage uses or other homes in subdivided lots behind them, as well as perhaps flag lots, but with other larger uses that tooth out behind them as well. This is that kind of the one lot prior to this application, from a density perspective, that just had the one single family home and did not have that rear use, whether it's on the same lot or a subdivided lot either. Why don't I skip over the site plan here, and Dan, we can talk about the elevations and the plans real quickly, since that's
yeah, okay.
The people what they want.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to just touch base on the exterior of it. We're going to be essentially using hardy siding on the perimeter of the building. I know Akash went into a little bit deeply on the inside of the building. We are going to be having this a very energy efficient building with the proper insulation values that need to be installed. But of course, the outside aesthetics, we're looking essentially, for lack of a better term, a black and white building. We're going to be using black windows, energy efficient windows. And then we're going to probably end up going with a brick facade. I know stone is sort of shown at the lower portion of it, but we're pondering back and forth on brick or stone, and then just trying to work out something that works best with the aesthetic and character of the neighborhood. And of course, we're using asphalt shingles on the roof. I did see a comment about the columns that are protruding, holding up these decks that we have. And essentially, due to the tight nature of the site, we will be driving underneath these colonnade type structures. But the columns themselves, there's a few factors that we can do to prevent people from backing into them or knocking them over and knocking the whole deck down. And that is, we could possibly use steel columns on these structures, or we could use sonotubes to raise the concrete bottoms of it. So like you see at light poles and malls, essentially we could have a higher pedestal. So that way, if anybody does back into it or drive into it, it won't knock the deck down. So that's certainly an option we can consider doing on the structural aspect of it. And then as far as the deck, we are going to be using pretty much all maintenance-free materials. That is composite decking, composite railings, no maintenance on these items. The hardy siding, as I mentioned, again, will be really no maintenance on these things. So essentially, beyond the energy efficiency of this building, it will also be maintenance-free.
Dan, I'm going to, I think, go to the floor plans. Can you just briefly, the size of these units? These are fairly modest units, but you want to just take us through the this is basement and first floor. Let me know if I could skip to the next one if that's helpful. But what type of rough size of these units, bedroom counts, the type of family or person that be using one of these is probably of interest to the board.
You're right. We can certainly address the starting with the basement plan at the top. Well, you go back one slide.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, right there, the basement plan. So essentially what we'll be doing, since we're at grade on half this site, we are going to have entrances at grade level. So essentially where that drive was underneath the decks, we can have doors that come in at grade level. And this would give you basically the nature of each one of these, that we can have that entrance there. And then on the first floor, the plan below, again, you'll see entrances starting with the left unit, which is unit A. That's approximately a 662 square foot floor plan right there. And that'll have an entrance facing right off Linden Lane. The middle unit will have, again, either entrance at the lower level or at the upper level, and you'll see it facing towards the rear, a side property line, I'm sorry, towards the side there. We have, again, a front entrance there. And then we have the mirror image of unit C as unit A, same thing. They'll have an entrance at upper grade, and then they'll have an entrance at lower grade. So essentially two means of egress out of this location. Each one of these units is, again, approximately anywhere from 645 to 662 square feet for just this floor. You go to the next slide. And then on the upper level, we have, again, the issue of stairs going up. That will be essentially creating a 3-bedroom second floor area. We have a 2-bathroom, 1 master bath, 1 regular bath, and laundry area on that second level. All 3 units, again, will have the same type of layout. A and C are mirror images of each other. And then unit B will be a bit unique, but unit B will be, the middle one will be a little bit bigger. But again, these things range anywhere from 688 to 709 square feet per unit on that floor.
So that's about what, 1,300 square feet to 1,350 per unit overall?
Correct, total, right. Not counting the basement level, just the
Sure, yeah.
first or second level.
Great. And here's rendering as generally, as far as I know you mentioned the black and white and the kind of the parged concrete at the bottom. This reflects the materials that are being thought about here.
Yeah, we were, again, as I mentioned, the lower section, either stone, brick, or even possibly parged concrete. So still in the design phases of that, but this rendering shows the gray parged concrete look. And then, yeah, essentially a black and white. The rendering doesn't quite do as much justice, but it is a hardy panel, which is a very nice product to use. It's going to create a different aesthetic, I think, for the character what we have here. And then, of course, the columns are shown in wood, which we can definitely do on the upper part. And as I said earlier, that we could certainly do something on the lower columns holding up the decks, that we can do it as maybe a higher sonotube concrete base, or possibly even go into steel columns on these as well, steel square columns.
And if there was an aesthetic question, if they were steel columns, they certainly could be wrapped in something, either that wood or something similar to the trim on the other deck elements.
Right, we could wrap it or paint it. Yeah, but there definitely would be sturdy enough that if a car accidentally backs into it or something, it won't collapse.
Okay. So we, as Elizabeth had some comments, Sprad had some similar thoughts here. So we've took what Sprad gave us. We had a nice work session with them, and I think we were have the I guess dubious honor of being the last ever Sprad hearing before Princeton changed perhaps how they want to get advice about their applications. But comment one, what big one was, to a front porch here would be appropriate for the neighborhood, and that was a good idea. So we're happy to add that. The revised plans show a traditional looking front porch for that front unit fronting onto Linden. That was a great idea, and one that we've implemented and are committing to. I'm gonna ask Jim to field this one a little bit, but ultimately there was some concern with while a lot of people are used to backing out onto Linden. There was some concern with 3 cars in backing down this driveway. So we did find room for a K-turn area and reconfigured the parking so that each of these cars can make a turning maneuver in the back and then head forward down and leave going head first rather than backing down. I think we were comfortable that it would work, but we kind of agreed that this was perhaps a better solution. Yeah, you lose a tiny bit of coverage in the back and some of the but still enough open space area for what Princeton asks for with a multiple unit or attached dwellings. Jim, anything you want to add to that in in putting that design together?
No, I would just say that originally the goal here was also to minimize the impervious as much as possible. So that sort of drove the minimization of the parking and the turnaround area. But given the input, we provided this turnaround area at the rear of the 3 parking stalls here. And then we also accentuated an access to unit B in the center, noting that unit could be accessed from the driveway at the lower level in the basement or from this additional entrance within the side yard.
Got it. And then this pink on the left, that's the Linden Lane side that shows the small increase of coverage, I suppose, related to the front porch that we wanted to put on there.
Right.
I know there's a full stormwater plan, and Elizabeth had some questions about that, but ultimately the water slopes maybe I'll just go back a few slides to stormwater plan. You know, you can see on the topo here, there is even in the existing condition, a considerable, if the left is Linden Lane, and you're looking at the front of the lot from the street, right to left, topo change, a slope to the left. You know, I just want to talk generally about what you're doing for stormwater and how it might even improve from the current conditions.
Yeah, I think to address the comment, a majority of the lot does slope towards the rear. And then in the proposed plan, we included connecting those roof leader drains from the building, from almost the entirety of the building to a drainage BMP in the rear of the yard that would, serve to address that and keep that away from the adjacent residents.
Thank you. And since we're here, landscape screening kind of along the sides and rear of the site.
Yeah, we tried to include some native landscaping along the side property line, which is to the north there, and with a drainage swale that would pick up any miscellaneous water, again, keeping it away from that property line and conveying it either one portion to the front, the rest of it to the rear. We have some foundation plantings and plantings as well up along the front access and the rear access. And then in terms of sensitivity to trees, obviously there are several existing trees on the lot, and we're dealing with, a very rather constrained 50-foot wide lot here. The considerations that were given originally with some of the trees focused within the rear yard, we did need to modify some grading with the plan that you're looking at here with the smaller back out and turnaround area. And some of that grading does impact several of the trees within that open space area at the rear, but we did take a look at that with the intent of trying to save several of those trees. So if we did proceed with this particular configuration, there's a possibility that we could tweak the contours just a little bit and still convey the water as necessary to the rear and to the north by changing that just slightly. But as you can see, we did focus on that rear open space for the tree compensation plantings to try to green that up again after this development with some additional shade trees. So, those were the considerations of trying to avoid that area, number one, with the disturbance, but then on the replanting plan, trying to maximize trees in that back area, yet still keep it somewhat open and usable. Those were some of the considerations that we had thought about.
Thanks, Jim. I'm going to skip ahead. We're going back to our, things that we took from SPRAB to incorporate into the project and address their key concerns. So the front porch, the material on the on these posts here, creating that turnaround area so that frankly may not be even with the reinforced posts that could take a wallop from a car, but removing the likelihood that would happen by allowing people to turn around here in the back. The sidewalk or entrance to get to this middle unit, you could enter both from the driveway side or from a sidewalk that would be proposed on that side. And then again, to go to Elizabeth's point and what SPRAB, what we heard from SPRAB and is what we looked at from the get-go with this site and this part of the neighborhood is that the zoning that Princeton has that has us ask for a list of bulk variances, but which permits multiple units and attached dwellings, but does not allow those same configurations when they're detached, gives us some difficulty, because so the density for this part of the neighborhood and land use pattern, does fit the density of the proposal, but Princeton's code has us pack those into one building and unfortunately not be able to split them without a use variance. So, if you look to our left, you see a pattern of the lots similar to ours, but being split in half with uses behind them. And on both sides as well, in some cases, more of an intense commercial use with residential in front, even further subsplitting on the corner with multiple units. And we looked at what it would be to match that, and it might fit quite well. And SPRAB seemed to like this, but unfortunately they advised the planning board, which can't say yes to this. And similarly, having a duplex in the front and either subdividing into an undersized lot that would match the neighborhood, or some type of use variance that would allow, for example, an ADU or some other splitting of these 3 units into 2 buildings in the back. However, that's not relief the planning board could grant, and it's difficult to suggest. We've gotten some support for that from SPRAB, and maybe we'll hear from you that is a direction that you see in keeping. Unfortunately, it's just so far from what the code says for this zone that gives us pause. And the code kind of directs us towards an application with the attached units, and to kind of shoehorn what type of variances they need on top of that even further when this is, I'll say, a physical possibility. But that's one of the reasons why we're here, just like we went to SPRAB to get that feedback. We've addressed best we can the practical. January 12th was when we the last ever SPRAB meeting. But again, feedback, if HPC were in favor as SPRAB was on something like this, it may be something that could move forward as a better solution. But I'll just say is that the type of variance that's required there, gives us pause. Anytime you have a D variance to try to have a use that's just not yet permitted, like these split building types, no matter how much it seems like the rest of the neighborhood, we're always guided by what the code tells us should be done. So one last piece, or Elizabeth, jump right in. Sure.
Yeah, I just have, I understand what you're saying. I mean, we do hear this often enough with the zoning ordinance and things like that. I guess the question I have is, one, I mean, we have seen this application. We've not really liked it, although if it's in the rear of the building, you probably can't see it. When it's attached, it does not mean that it has to be attached for to live in. It can actually be a physical attachment that I believe the zoning board considers that still attached, almost like if it had, I don't know.
Like a breezeway,
yes,
we're talking.
that connects and then attaches to another building in the back. They would consider that still an attached building. And the second thing is, if it's a use variance has to go to the zoning board, correct?
Correct.
I mean,
so that's why we have great pause.
Right. But at this point, you have like a lot of variances anyway, which I'm not sure. I mean, I read it. The calculation is a little bit questionable to me how it came up, because first of all, I didn't know if it was for purchase or for rent. So I wasn't really sure if there was actually like a, a zero lot line around all of these family units, or if it was rental. So that was, I wasn't sure.
Well,
how
one, I'll say that we represented to SPRAB that it's the intention to, it's something to like a 99% degree of expectation that this would be rented. This is not proposed to be a condominium. We were asked to superimpose that bizarre, as if it were being subdivided matrix upon this, because that's what zoning thought this felt like. If you look at the list of variances, and again, that's, we're more interested in what how this feels to you and what you'd like us to be doing. Right. But if you look at the list of variances, it's much smaller when you look at it not as a oddly subdivided, and again, we
Right.
would not be subdividing, we would not be condominiumizing it, but when you look at it that way, the list of variances increases exponentially, but that's how zoning saw it.
Okay, yeah, and I think that might be something that they would reconsider, because I mean, when I read it, to me, I mean, your front yard and side setback are what it is, because it's one structure, even if you have multiple units with different entrances, that type of thing. But that's a different conversation. But
Sure,
again,
no, it is, and one that we agree with you on, by the way. So,
and so, but as Ms. Capizoli was saying, that attached could be like a breezeway that you could kind of get around that, because we've seen that done. Again, we've seen it where we didn't always like it because it was very visible, but if it's in the back, and this is a pretty large lot, that it might work in this case.
Well,
So,
actually, it won't really work, because basically we already have a situation where if we have a separate building in the back, that's pretty much where the parking needs to be. So really what you're doing is you're asking to build a bridge over a parking area, because basically the format you see there, it's, say that's the one building in the back and the two are in the front. We got to get parking in there. So it really will not work. And Derek Bridger, or I think already shot that idea down. So we did address something about a connecting bridge or breezeway, if you will.
but from a site perspective, so the short answer is we looked at it in a way that, and you're correct, that if they are connected, and we looked at one point 3 almost separate buildings, but with parking in between them. The problem was with the way that the site slopes, and just the layout. You know, again, having this barn back here on the neighboring property. It just, from a layout perspective, once you committed to actually physically touching them and losing that space in between them, we just, from a site perspective, with them touching, we couldn't make it work from a site perspective. From a, you know, if you could separate them, that's different. I mean, you see how it works from the left, you know, from all the neighboring properties, but to string them together with some kind of overhang breezeway situation, we tried. You know, we have decks here. We tried to almost line the decks up with each other to connect and playing with that, and ultimately it just didn't. We just couldn't make that work with that. I don't know what you want to call it, a Frankenstein with keep telescoping structures with kind of this artificial connection between them, just to continue the with the plan we have. It's kind of the farce that they're townhouses. They're not. That's what zoning looks at them as. They're really not. But with this, there's no similar farce that's not a D variance, right? Unless they're physically touching, and we played with that for quite a bit, unfortunately.
Well, if it's okay, I'd like to open this up to commission members for questions and comments. So if we could go back to the gallery, I'd like to get just input on the massing, the character of the neighborhood, how you feel this works, integrates. I mean, my sense is the way it's masked right now, it's kind of overwhelming compared to the rest of the neighborhood. It just looks sort of like a warehouse or something. I mean, it's so large and long, but I don't know. Are there other commissioners? David?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. And I may have missed this part. It's rentals and not purchase units, correct? Yeah. So, our discussion, our part of this is about design, how it fits into the setting of its actual lot and of the neighborhood. And I will echo what Julie just said about the mass is gigantic compared to other properties on the street, and certainly compared to what was there. The only thing that I think drives the design here is not so much its context or setting materials is the maximum amount of stuff you can build on the lot. That's the only thing that I see here. I don't see anything that relates to anything else. What comes through to me is just, this is what we can get here. And I just feel like that's kind of trying to fit a, is it a round peg into a square hole, or how do you say that phrase anyway? And then I just feel like the building could be anywhere. It could be, it doesn't seem to relate to anything. It could be built, well, as I said, it could be built anywhere. And it doesn't seem to reflect any of the qualities of the neighborhood in material, scale, detail, and so on. It's kind of a shame that this is a house with a deep backyard, and I see people doing backyard kind of things there. And now we have a backyard that, well, I don't even think you could set up a volleyball net and play back there. And I'm really curious about some of the phrasing in what I read last night about, what is it? Drainage swales. I mean, what will that lawn even look like? And will there be, Elizabeth, will there be anything, renderings of how that space will look? I don't quite get it from what we've been provided. And then my next question was 4, 5. I guess that's everything. It just doesn't feel like it makes an attempt to be a part of the neighborhood. And I think that's what our charge is about. That's why we're being asked to look at it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Tom, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, David, for those interesting comments. I, in general, agree. Our purview here is to review this because this is a potential historic district. It's not yet one declared as historic, right? So we're advising in this regard, right? Well, first of all, I'm sure our applicants might consider changing the name of this outfit from Simplify Living to Complicate Living, given all the hoops they have to go through. So we're all sympathetic and we appreciate your efforts. As to the scale question, David has a legitimate point there, although my impression of the neighborhood suggests that there are some other buildings that are large and they're small. It's an eclectic group of buildings, not particularly, and Linden Lane in particular is not necessarily uniform in look. But I would ask, and by the way, I also appreciate what you're trying to do. We have to find more housing in Princeton. You're trying to find a way to generate some more housing opportunity in Princeton. That's appreciated. So I guess I would ask you good folks, what if we were to read Elizabeth's thorough memo here describing some of the questions, much of it relates to the visual compatibility of the building. And I think David was touching on this in his comments. Does this fit in? Scale perhaps, but also the way it looks. And his impression is that it is a building that looks generic and could be placed anywhere. What do you good folks think addresses the visual compatibility problem that might inhibit this commission from being able to approve this based on its historic value?
Well,
And
we
by
can
the way,
certainly look at
I thank you.
changing the aesthetic skin of it. I mean, essentially, yeah, I mean, a black and white building might not fit the vernacular of that neighborhood, but certainly we could do something with the aesthetic siding and different materials on it.
Mm-hmm. And I appreciate that sorry, just to say the planning council asked you to put a porch on the street facing side, which might integrate it a bit better. Understood. I think, sorry, I interrupted someone.
No, I was just going to say, to your question generally, you know, we are in some respects constrained by what types of things Princeton permits. So agreed, one on the porch perspective, and to the extent there are specific elements both in the design that, you know, that's part of a process that we want to make sure that staff and HPC are part of, and we'd be open to it. You know, the core question of what fits on here, unfortunately, is a function of a zone that allows this number of units, that allows this floor area, and you know, probably wouldn't allow what's happening to the left and right at the moment. I mean, in fact, does not on either side. But there's no zoning path other than a use variance that would allow to duplicate that type of, whether you want to call it scale or site layout, that you'll see on either side of the property without a risky and lengthy process before the zoning board. And I guess one of the things, to the extent that that's from an aesthetic and neighborhood feel, we want to hear as much as we can from you guys. One, about the specific things like we did with Sprab and the porch, and some of the skinning of it. Certainly that's an area of expertise here. But from a neighborhood feel, if it turns out that that's the best path, or the path that the applicant wants to go down, to hear that that's something that would be potentially a balance that HPC would support in general. That if you're looking at the feel of this part of the neighborhood and seeing maybe not necessarily this, but a hefty D variance perhaps to do something that you do feel, I guess we'd like to hear that, because that would help us understand which way to go and what might allow this applicant to get something built. Because unfortunately, we're kind of left away with what the planning board can grant. And I know in the past there's been times, and I'm not necessarily asking for it immediately from HPC, but there have been times where there have been particularly large floor area variances, for example, which were the HPC for whatever reason was involved, found that they could support, or at least understand the direction they're going because of the other considerations. Because I'm hoping to hear some of those other considerations here from the neighborhood layout, and if that's the direction you think we should go, obviously it's not committing to support it, but your input and feel on it certainly helps us, and would help either of those boards understand why we'd be asking for such drastic relief.
All right, are there other people that want to make comments? Elric, I see your hand up. You're on mute.
Unmute.
Better?
Yep.
You said it yourself, Frankenstein. I think you're pushing all the PC issues about energy and all the buzzwords, but in the end, what this really testifies to me is just greed. It's trying to get the maximum amount out of a small lot. It is, the aesthetics are pathetic. I mean, it's awkward, and it's not just awkward to the neighborhood. I picture the three unfortunate people who are going to wind up, fortunate families are going to wind up cheek to jowl in that lot. You've got these extravagantly proportioned outside porches with macadam running underneath them, and pity the poor neighbor that has all the activities on those three porches, all facing out on their property. It's unfortunate, and it seems like you've tried to change one thing after another. If there was ever a clear vision, it's no longer relevant. It's just an amalgam of unfortunate poor solutions. I'm against it. Sorry.
All right, thank you, Elric. I'm going to give everybody else a chance. Shirley?
Yes, I don't want to be redundant, but I just have a concern about developers coming into the communities and building something that they get profit off of and other people live there. I can see that as someone's home, but it just seems like those units should be somewhere else. And I like to know how the neighbors feel about it also.
All right, thanks. I haven't heard from Frida yet. Frida?
Well, I agree with what the rest of the commission has said. I actually lived on Linden Lane, and that unit does not fit in with that street. I mean, I would be, I think, probably the only 3-family resident in that block. I think there's a bigger unit further down. And yeah, I think it's really, overall, I have a problem with people building homes in Princeton and saying they're adding more units to Princeton when they're all rental units. There's no opportunity to own. smaller
Right.
properties, so that's my pet peeve. But it won't fit in, I don't think it'll fit within the street at all. You know, and think about the neighbor in that little house on the other side. My God, it'll have three units, 3 porches overlooking their tiny little house. Yeah, I could not support this as it stands right now.
Yeah, Roger, you're on mute. Okay. Oh, we're still not hearing you. Do you have your volume up? Okay. You're on mute.
Does that work now?
Yep,
Yeah.
it works.
Okay, sorry about that. I have a new headset. I would start where David started out a while ago about scale. As a couple of people have said, Linden is heterogeneous. There's some modern houses across the street. There's a 21st century house down the block. There's a barn behind this proposed house that dates to 1910, 1911. That's used by Redding's Plumbing. So there's a lot of different stuff going on. But to me, I think the lowering of the driveway really exacerbates the out of scale look of this particular building, because currently that's it seems to me that will take a bit of excavation to get that driveway at grade and have the 3 stories above it. And to me, that is perhaps the one feature that's going to make it look more out of scale than if it were just built on the current foundation and left in grade as it currently is.
All right. Any more?
No.
Okay. All right, Tom, I know
Thanks.
you've had your
Yeah,
hand up again.
I'm a minority perhaps in this view, but I just want to comment. We've in this round talked about profits, greed, and ownership. I think we have to be open-minded to solutions that are being proposed by developers and owners, and be flexible in terms of the kind of habitats that we have in Princeton. Not everybody can own in Princeton, and there needs to be more housing options in Princeton, in my particular view. This could be, and I agree with Elric's point, it is a Frankenstein, so he hit it as correctly, but I think we mustn't discourage people coming into the process, because this is a very expensive process, and then dismiss them as greedy profiteers. Builders have to make a profit, and even owners have to make a profit, as we all do when we sell and trade our houses and consider our own habitat. So all I'm just saying is, from an economics point of view, although that's not our domain, we mustn't be insensitive to the dynamics and the efforts of good-hearted people who are trying to make better things happen for us in Princeton. It does cost money, unfortunately.
Yeah, let me channel Robert von Zumbush here, who would remind us that the Secretary of Interior standards for historical preservation exclude financial issues, economic issues. We're not supposed to concern ourselves with that. It's the historical appropriateness and the way that something fits or doesn't fit into a neighborhood. And I think we've touched on that pretty much.
We do need housing, but we need housing for those who can afford it.
Correct. More housing
Well,
for more
I
people
think
everywhere.
one of my main objections is that you have the 3 decks all, facing that one property owner, which doesn't seem fair to that property owner. I mean, if all 3 were to have parties at the same time, I think that would be a really overwhelming situation. Does the commission think that, even though it's a lot of work, having the effort to go to zoning and putting a building in the back and then having a building in the front, what's the feeling about that? I mean, I think
that doesn't sound practical. That's probably a decision the developers would have to consider. it doesn't look like it's going to solve the kinds of problems that we've been raising tonight. Scale is an issue. Generic quality is an issue. Driving access is a problem. It's a difficult issue, but I don't think breaking the thing into 2 units is going to make this problem any better from our point of view.
It could affect the scale. I mean, you could downsize the scale. And there, as some of the overhead photos showed, there's lots of precedent for 2 buildings on a lot.
Right. And the other
No,
thing
that's
is that then the decks might be able to face in the back rather than on the side. I'm just saying it could maybe make it less Frankensteinish, you know, especially if there's it's more like a duplex with 2 front porches, or, you know, I'm just thinking about ways to make it fit in with the neighborhood. Because, you know, to Roger's point, there are some large buildings, very modern buildings on Linden. It's not like it's this homogeneous, you know, early 20th century neighborhood. It really varies.
In a lot of cities, you see houses that fit in very well that are, I guess, the traditional triple decker kind of thing, where the architecture still has a lot of the same characteristics as the streetscape, you know, porches on 3 levels and just design and construction elements that look like they relate to the area. So, you know, this is a question that trying to fit housing into places appropriately has been addressed for a long time. And I guess it really is challenging. And this lot is large, which kind of leads to the idea of being able to develop more things on it, but its shape, I guess, just was the wrong challenge. And there's nothing we can do about that, I guess, except for asking for all kinds of relief. And I guess that's what the whole thing's about. I just don't know if it's a project that, I don't know. It's hard to say that, you know, doing one format or another format's going to make it better when it's so far distant in terms of the aesthetic that they came up with. I think that's the part that still bothers me, aesthetic and scale. And cutting down that driveway is really enhances the scale in the wrong way. If you wanted to build a big, impressive house, I guess that's how you do it. I'm sorry, I'm done.
All right, Elizabeth, do you have your hand up? Sorry.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. So I think that the applicant has heard from SPRAB, which was really great that they had a lot of the same comments that we had, which was that the neighborhood character is obviously single or duplex typically within that neighborhood. And there are detached buildings that are in the back, whether it be a garage or old carriage house or barn or whatever. And I think that type of format would work best to be able to be compatible to this neighborhood. So I think that breaking it up would help it. I think you could still keep the streetscape with something that's going to be compatible. It's not a copycat or identical, something like that, but, you know, being able to incorporate some features that are representative of some of the historic character that is important for that neighborhood. And then have that building in the back, which could look like, you know, who knows what. You know, whether it looks like a barn or just another building, but at least it's offset and the lot is deep enough. So hopefully, you know, that would work out. But the elevation is a problem. I mean, as I wrote in the report, the elevation in the front is like 10 feet and it's 12 feet in the back. I don't know what happened with that. I know that there used to be a retaining wall that's being removed so you could lower it, but that really is a problem with visually the way that building looks. You know, it just makes it so much more that way. And because you're not able to use that access driveway on the side, or maybe you can, you know, that you're placing it underneath that side of the lot and underneath the decks. So I think that combination is really problematic. And I see Ryan shaking his head that they cannot use that access easement. Is that correct?
Unfortunately, there's a couple of issues with it. You know, we talked this through with SPRAB, but the short answer is no. Someone hit on one of the things that might be a compatibility issue, even if we could, just with the use that's next door is a little, from a truck perspective, there's it's not an entirely residential use next door, but unfortunately, no. Between the topo, you know, if you were to come off the way we'd like, you kind of end up being kind of elevated up above the lot on the next door with the topo, but just the terms of it, unfortunately, wouldn't allow something like this. We checked, unfortunately, but there's site topo problems with it, and then we have, again, with the separating of the buildings, would have made it possible physically. You know, we have at the Reading property next door, there is a rear barn that they use, so it would have to cut over kind of mid-lot to come back into this site, which means that you'd have to have something, you know, a use kind of behind where that cuts over, kind of, you know, lined up with that, you know, with their barn essentially, which from a view of the neighborhood actually would kind of work, but it doesn't work when they're not attached. So, you know, maybe with some kind of funky breezeway, otherwise we'd be looking at a D variance. But if we could do that, you know, I don't know, again, not to pin it on anyone, but I'll say that this was an application, I know we're in COVID, but was filed, you know, 2 years ago. We only got SPRAB comments, you know, last month or in January. So it's a tough process where you have to kind of go in, and I know there's some work actively being done to kind of change the way things happen. But, you know, for a D variance, there's no, zoning board, unfortunately, is not permitted to do concept reviews. It's just not a thing that lives in the zoning world. We don't have SPRAB anymore, but even then you have to, you know, have a fully engineered project to get to that point. And, you know, we're getting some good feedback now, but to kind of reset and go a different direction, it's tough with the, you know, this is not the have SPRAB or HPC design your project, you know, path, of course not. But there's unfortunately at the moment kind of a lack of paths to get this type of feedback. So we keep coming back, and Julie, I really appreciate you asking the group again, as you did a few minutes ago, because that, I know it's not binding, but those type of comments for us are what we might have to hang our hat on, you know, in terms of, you know, having some comfort in moving in a totally different direction where, you know, we can't have a concept or this kind of pre-application meeting with the zoning board. It just doesn't exist. But having a feel perhaps that you guys who you know would still be in an advisory role to the zoning board, you know, what you think about it goes a long way. So again, Madam Chairman, I really appreciate you asking everyone about it, because that at the end of the day may be the only thing we can kind of rest on to know whether that's the way to go.
Right. So Ryan, but I do want to say that, you know, even though HPC serves as advisory, I mean, I think like if you go to the zoning board, HPC's memo really does, you know, weigh a lot when they do the review, and HPC is always happy to do a concept review.
Agreed on both. And I know earlier tonight, yeah, I probably maybe set the record for most concept reviews in one application with Parkside, or at least we tried to. But agreed completely. I just, you know, I know you're not writing that memo now. You don't have that project before you, but just having an idea that, you know, that may be a path in the future, that if we came back with something that looked like that, but needed to go a different path, that you know, there may be a chance that HPC said, hey, we see the scale of the neighborhood, we see how the neighborhood is laid out. The zone doesn't see that, the zoning doesn't see that, but we see it, and we recognize these variances are needed, and that would go on. I agree 100%, Elizabeth, that your you know, stamp of approval or at least understanding of an issue like that does go a long way with the zoning board if that were to happen. So which is why we kind of ask about it. You know, we were pretty upfront even in the presentation, saying, you know, here's the thing that is not at all what we've proposed, but we think would work. But is it worth an investment in it? And you know, it's unfortunate you have to wait 2 years to get to ask somebody that question, but here we are.
Yeah, I'm sorry that the process has been so difficult, because I think there is some effort right now to fix that process. Obviously, it didn't work as well with Sprab, so there's work efforts to try to revamp that with more review at a conceptual level rather than later. So definitely understood. I wanted to see if there's anybody from the public, any attendees who have any comments, any public comment. Justin, do you see anybody?
There's one attendee. It's still Thomas Foster, and I don't know if they were with the applicant.
I believe there's a connection there. So if he has something to say, it might be super positive.
So they can raise their hand at this time if they'd like to speak.
And, I just wanted to mention to the commission, as part of your review and your comments toward this application, you can always make that as a strong recommendation, that you would be supportive of them going in, understanding that it would require a use variance. And I don't know if that's helpful for the applicant or not.
I think, look, any comments we get from HPC are always helpful, to the process. I think something like that, and I know it's on a, it's visioning something that's not yet before you, but just the understanding in general that you recognize that the problems, that we're hearing from you with this application are ones that perhaps could be maybe not fully remedied, but some of these are tied to a reluctance to ask for relief that's really hard to get, or that it's a type of, whether it's a multi-building, it's a type of housing that from the zoning code just doesn't exist, whether it's, you call it a duplex and an ADU, which doesn't exist under the ADU ordinance, whether it's detached, attached dwellings, that's not a thing either. Maybe it should be, but I think that would, again, I understand the caveats that would go with it, but that certainly would be very helpful to the applicant's understanding of which way to invest and what to do.
Okay.
My sense is that the project would improve greatly if it were separated into two different structures. I just think that would help both the scale and the way it fits into the neighborhood, that would create a lot more options. And, I think it's unfortunate that it's zoned against that. So, but I don't know. I want to hear what other people think. David, what do you think?
He's on mute. No?
No, I took myself off mute. My brain is on mute, I'm afraid. I don't. Yeah, something different. And I guess just there's a lot of options, but I don't want to design these people's project for them, but it seems like, maybe the approach of 3 rental units on that site just doesn't work out well. And, there's a demand for buildable lots. You could resell it. There's a chance of building a house and a great ADU behind it. There's a lot of things that could be done. I don't think that our reluctance to love this project presents, a dead end for them. That property, that street, highly desirable. I think there's a lot of things that could be done there, but perhaps not this project.
Mm-hmm.
Those are my thoughts.
Julie?
Yes.
2 things. One, we should find out from Ryan and the applicant before the end whether or not they want to take this idea forward to the planning board before we write up something which would obviously at this time be pretty negative. 2, the part of your write-up or your recommendation could be that the R4 zone be amended to permit 2 buildings in a specific situation and not require a use variance, which Ryan says is very difficult to get, and it is very difficult to get.
Yeah.
Finally, I've got to drop off. I've got to be in Lawrence Township at 7 o'clock. So
Okay.
I'll catch up with Elizabeth in the morning.
Oh, thank you so much, Ed. We really appreciate you coming in. Thank you. All right, take care. Okay. So, yeah, Elric.
I think you had a good point before, and I'd like to revisit it, and that was the notion of the porches. And it just seems to me in having a mirror image, for instance, is a level of just laziness. There's an opportunity, if you're going to do 2 units or 3 units, to have them distinct. And what you were talking about with the porches, if one of them faced the street, as many of the houses on the tree streets do, that would have its own character. The backyard at this point is being used for parking, and it doesn't have to be. It's an opportunity to have one of the units look back onto that space, and possibly the one, if you did a separate unit in the back, turn it to the side so it faced the wagon house, not a barn. You can't thresh grain in it. But in any event, that has its own aesthetic, and it could have its own, that space back there could address that separately. To have the 3 porches all lined up looking at either the neighbor or the driveway is pretty absurd. And it's just, there are too many steps. It's just not a very well thought out plan. And the opportunity exists to make 3 identifiably different structures on that land, and better yet, 2.
Right. So, yeah, I think pretty much Ed got the gist of where we were going. And ultimately, I think that as the design stands, nobody's thrilled about it. So maybe if there's changes to the design as it is now, maybe that would work. Maybe if it's split up and it's there's another structure in the back, maybe that would work. But I think we really don't know yet.
That's fair, and we're texting back and forth here that some of the Elric's thought there is again a good one. So something perhaps can be accommodated. We're going to take a look at. So to Ed's point, as always helpful as he is, my hope is that we can take a look at some of these things and perhaps get back to through Elizabeth to give you guys some direction. We are currently scheduled for planning coming up, but I think his point and yours is a good one to perhaps be careful what we ask for because we'll certainly get it. So if it's all right for me to reconnect with you guys in the coming days to see whether we really do want this memorialized into some document for them to see, or whether we have some other vision of this that could perhaps come back. Again, so we're in this, maybe not, limbo is not the right word, but there's a pending planning board application. We're here as a courtesy review. Would we, if we had something else to show, would we come back as a concept, or just work with you, Elizabeth, to see if we could be seen as a further courtesy, I guess, or what that next meeting would be?
It could be either one, whether you want to come back with a modified design or a concept.
Okay.
It would be up to you.
Okay. All right.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming in. As always, like we said, we always have concept reviews available. I think all the boards should. I think it makes things run more smoothly.
I agree with you. I think the zoning board might need a statute update, unfortunately, for that to happen. And I guess I'll say, I didn't think of because this is not in the historic district, and I honestly, I did not think when we initially filed to seek one, and perhaps I don't know if it applies everywhere. If there's a good map that shows I think I'm now familiar with most of the districts that were considered at one point where there would be later on asked for a courtesy review. But perhaps that there's a way to communicate that differently, because I'll be honest, for this one, I don't think I would have thought to ever ask for a concept, because I didn't expect it to be here because we're not in a historic district.
Right. I think it's the if you go to the master plan historic element, it lists all the districts that are proposed. And so I believe the tree streets are one of the proposals. And then it lists out, what the streets are, like Maple, Linden, Spruce. So I think that's
and you guys you'll take a concept on essentially if we ask you, we'd get a concept, even if it's only on the fringes of your purview. All right, good. All right, thank you.
Yes. So thank you so much for coming in, and so we'll leave it there. And I appreciate everybody's help here. We are going to be back again tomorrow to review the Witherspoon Street changes. Elizabeth sent out the memos regarding, memos to the engineering department, and then Deanna sent out the presentation for Witherspoon Street. So we'll be back here 4 o'clock tomorrow, and hopefully we'll have a good discussion, and you'll have the materials you need. So
on that point, do we have the PowerPoint yet?
I think
it's on the website. Yeah, it's on the link.
It's on the website.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's I think it's too large to send over, but I think I sent the link over, didn't I? The only thing that's missing is the Nassau Street. I didn't get anything from engineering yet. So I think that you have the final design for phase 1, which is Nassau to Green Street, and then phase 2, which is Green to Franklin, which has 2 concept plans and their PowerPoint presentation on that, which were presented in front of the Witherspoon Jackson neighborhood meeting that was on Saturday. But those are on the link. I haven't gotten anything for Nassau Street yet. And I think that I also sent you the copies of the chair's SHPO memos, correct?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. 2 of them. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So if I get the other one on Nassau Street, I'll send it over. I'm not sure. Sorry.
And then we'll
thanks.
have be prepared for more public comment. I think, part of the reason we shifted it is so that the public can focus on this and not have all the applications to wade through before commenting. So we'll have all focused completely on Witherspoon Street tomorrow. We'll see you at 4 o'clock.
Okay, very good. Madam Chair, you don't want to continue the conversation about the affordable housing ordinance or the church?
Oh,
Do you?
yeah, the church. So,
I think,
let's just finish that up.
well, Shirley, I'll defer to you, but I think, we covered everything that needs to be
And
covered.
plus I have a session meeting at 7 o'clock.
Okay. All right. We'll
So
let
I'll
you
just
go.
volunteer.
Thank you,
that
Leighton.
I've worshiped in that church, and I am a very good friend of Elder Bynes' son. And I would like to be of any possible help intercessing behind anybody, if that could be of some use.
Thank you.
Oh, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you so much. All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Okay, Shirley, and I saw Tom second. So we will see everyone tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Thank you so much.
Okay, be
All
blessed.
right.
Thank
Same
you.
time, same back
Thank
channel.
you.
I was
Okay.
gonna say
Right,
that.
but
Peace out.
new meeting link. Okay, don't
Oh,
use the
new
same as
link.
today. New
Right.
meeting link.
Okay,
Everybody.
thank
Send it
you.
to us, please.
Good night.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Good night.
Okay.